Hello. Today we are going to talk about transition-related information for parents of a student with a disability. My name is Leah Bishop and I am a special education teacher. I'm currently getting my master's at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and I am going to be talking again about transition-related information. So, first of all, introduction, what is transition planning? Transition means a change from one phase to another. It's important to know that when a student is ready to leave high school, students must have supports put in place to assist them in achieving a successful life upon graduating. Transition planning involves a team of professionals, family members, and the student with a disability who meet to determine the student's strengths, interests, and preferences in the hopes of aligning a possible career option with that student's strengths and preferences. It's also important to know that through the student's individualized education plan, the student must receive transition services upon reaching the age of 14 in the state of Wisconsin. According to the United States Department of Education, a truly successful transition process is the result of comprehensive team planning that is driven by the dreams, desires, and abilities of youth. A transition plan provides the basic structure for preparing an individual to live, work, and play in the community as fully and independently as possible. The United States Department of Education also states that as students and youth with disabilities prepare to transition to adult life, we must do everything we can to provide them with information, services, and supports that they need to ensure that they have the opportunity to achieve their goals. Why is the transition planning process important? Well, there's many different reasons why this is very important. The first being that it helps an individual with a disability gain access to the community, independent living, employment, financial literacy skills, and social relationships. This is a time in a person's life in which a person can decide where to live, where to work, how to meet people, and how to achieve goals. It also helps promote those self-determination and self-advocacy skills, which are very important. And all in all, it helps people with disabilities live meaningful and fulfilled lives, which is very important as well. Wayman also adds that for individuals with disabilities, it includes a huge shift in the way that services and supports are provided. From the school-based systems in which educational staff actively seek out and administer supports to an adult system in which services are provided by several different agencies that each may have differing eligibility requirements, processes, and restrictions. And we'll get to that a little bit later, just the change between school supports and then adult services, because there is a major difference. And that's, again, why that transition planning process is just so critical. There are two major legislations involved with transition. The first one is Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act, or IDEA, of 2004. This law was originally enacted to ensure that all students had the right to a free and appropriate education, which we would call FAPE. The recent amendment, though, focused on schools providing transition-related services earlier for students with disabilities. And then the second major legislation is that Workforce Integrated Opportunity Act, or the WIOA, which was enacted in 2014. And this law was enacted to improve public employment conditions. The recent amendment included preparation of individuals with disabilities to acquire skills that will help them to secure successful employment opportunities. It is important to know that the IDEA amendment in the amendment for transition, the 2004 change, strengthened the transition process for students with disabilities. Wayman also states IDEA 2004 mandates that IEP teams ensure that students meet graduation requirements that relate to their post-secondary goals in education, employment, and independent living. IEP teams must now include related service providers that provide services beyond special education. And this could include vocational rehabilitation, counselors, or other outside transition-related agencies. It's important to know that the related services can include physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, orientation and mobility specialists, counseling, psychological services, social work services, recreation services, rehabilitation services and counseling, and transportation services. IDEA of 2004 defines transition services as is designed to be within a results-oriented process that is focused on improving the academic and functional achievement of the child with a disability to facilitate the child's movement from school to post-school activities, including post-secondary education, vocational education, integrated employment, including supported employment, continuing on adult education, adult services, independent living, and community participation. It's also important to know that the WIA legislation, the amendment of the law, focuses on transition programming and participation in post-secondary education and training for students with disabilities. The WIOA law contains a section called Title IV, and this focuses on providing transition services for youth and students with disabilities. Under Title IV, the WIOA of 2014 requires that vocational rehabilitation agencies must set aside 15% of their funding to provide pre-employment services for students who have identified as having a disability. The Virginia Department of Education lists the 5 required pre-employment services as being job exploration counseling in either a classroom or community setting, work-based learning experiences and internships, opportunities to enroll in transition or post-secondary education programs, workplace readiness training that is focused on social skills and independent living skills, and instruction in self-determination skills and self-advocacy skills. The overall goal is that students with disabilities will be receiving transition services at a younger age, which will increase the likelihood that they will secure successful employment opportunities after graduating high school. Harkin also states, whereas the employment rate for 25 to 34-year-olds with disabilities has been only half that of their peers, the gap in the labor force participation rate for 16 to 19-year-olds with disabilities and without disabilities has been on average only 10 to 15%. If we can ensure youth in this age group are hired at the same rate as their peers and provide them with support they need to remain successful in the workplace, we can make tremendous progress towards providing equal opportunity to all. Now we're going to focus again on those differences between services provided in the K-12 setting versus adult systems. So it's important to note that when a student with a disability is in school, the school system is responsible for providing services for the student, whether that be academic or transitional services. The student is in contact with the parent or guardian, and the school will provide the supports that the student needs to experience success. During this time, the school is the student's greatest advocate. However, once the student with a disability graduates, adult service agencies operate much differently. Each agency has its own criteria and application process that this person with a disability must complete. And during this process, the individual with the disability is his or her own greatest advocate. So it's important to be aware of the different services and agencies that can help provide supports for an adult with a disability. These resources and agencies will be shared later on in this presentation. This is why it is again so critical to have interagency collaboration while the student with a disability is in high school. Forming the relationship with outside agencies should occur before the student with a disability graduates. This will help form positive connections with outside supports and will help the student feel more comfortable working with different agencies. The agencies will also have a greater understanding of how to best meet the student's needs. I will share later on in this presentation a list of resources, but one guide that is very helpful for parents with transitioning their child to working with adult services is called Opening Doors, A Guide to Adult Services. And this came from Tony Evers from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And like I said, that will be shared later on in this presentation. Taking a look then, and I touched on this a little bit, but the importance of that. Now we're going to talk a little bit about transition related to academics and assessments. Through the IDEA legislation of 2004, this law required that students with disabilities be given a transition assessment that is age appropriate. Transition curriculum planning is complex and it requires an understanding of the individual person. It requires extensive planning and preparation, and it should always be changing and adapting because it's aligned with the student's future career goals, which may change throughout their time in high school. I know mine did. When I was in high school, my freshman year, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and now I'm a special education teacher. So, again, it is really important that this process is fluid and adapting because each year that student is going to continue to grow and to change. Advances in technology have helped with transition curriculum. The curriculum should be person centered, and personal interest inventory provides a good starting point with this. And then greater access today to the general education classroom environment. So these are all major points that I will be addressing. The process of transition curriculum should be individualized depending on the student's interests, strengths, and preferences. Teachers can now engage students in the transition curriculum through computers, cell phones, and assistive technology. Technology has really helped with transition assessments, especially with that assistive technology piece. It's made it more accessible for all students, which is great. Wayman states that students with disabilities have difficulty seeing a plan B for their lives. They get stuck with plan B and need conversations with teachers and family members to bring about plans for other dreams and goals. This is why completing these transition assessments is so very important. And again, through the IDEA law, it's now mandatory. All schools must provide students with an academic and functional skills summary, even if they move to a different school district. So they must have that provided to share out if that student transitions. It's also important to note that some school districts can pay outside agencies to conduct vocational assessments. These assessments then can provide information about possible career interests for students, and the results can show a student's soft skills and strengths needed for job success. Another amendment to that IDEA law in 2004 ensured that students with disabilities be held accountable to take district and state assessments just as their non-disabled peers. Students with severe disabilities can take alternate assessments, so this was another major change. Today more than ever before, students with disabilities have greater access to learning in the general education classroom environment. Most services are co-taught, meaning that they are provided in the general education classroom environment by a special education teacher working directly with a regular education teacher. And this helps to remove barriers and stigmatization of pulling students with disabilities out of the general education classroom environment and then further marginalizing them. This practice promotes equity across access to learning and opportunities for all students, which is the goal. Next, we're going to take a look at Universal Design for Learning and Transition. So this is something that I recently learned about, but is very, very important. You may be familiar with Universal Design for Learning. This is something that works to provide universal access to education for all students, including students with cognitive, physical, and emotional disabilities. Educators must understand the needs of all students, and they should work to differentiate instruction to include all learners in the classroom environment. Something that you may not be as familiar with, I wasn't until recently, is Universal Design for Transition, something called UDT. This works to create links between the academic content and transition planning. So the components of UDL could be multiple means of representation, so showing information through many different ways, multiple means of expression, and then multiple means of engagement. So it could be visuals, could be sound. Components of UDT are multiple life domains, multiple means of assessment, student self-determination, and then multiple resources and perspectives. So that's something to be aware of as well. There can be both formal and informal assessments. Some examples of formal assessments could be self-determination assessments, intelligence tests, or life skills measures. And then examples of informal assessments could be portfolios, checklists, visual and audio recordings of performance. The most common transition assessments are direct observations, surveys, and checklists. Also interviews, and then interest inventory. So those are some of the most common transition assessments. Next, we're going to take a deeper look into self-advocacy. So I know I talked a little bit before about that self-determination and self-advocacy, but now we're going to talk about self-advocacy in leading IEP meetings. So self-determination is a personal attribute, characteristic, or distribution that contributes to having control over one's destiny. Students with disabilities need to become their own advocates, and steps must be taken to involve students throughout the IEP process and should work to have students lead their own IEP meetings. That should be a goal. Can also help to increase advocacy skills and inform students about what their disability is and what that means. Students should be aware of what supports they need and why these supports are helpful. Self-advocacy teaching should begin during the elementary school years and provide students with choices. So providing them with choices is a way for them to start, practicing those self-advocacy skills. Students should be provided with ways to make decisions. They should also be involved in goal setting, and students must also be aware of their strengths and challenges. This is very, very important because in the future, their strengths and challenges will be aligned with their potential career. Next, we're going to take a look at post-secondary transition plan and summary of performance. These are two pieces that are, again, required through IDEA law, and they must be a part of the IEP. So the plan is created by the IEP team when the student has reached the age of 13, turning 14. The plan also requires the team to list the student's strengths and include the career choice that the student is interested in. The plan must also require the team to list classes that the student is taking that aligns with the career goal. The plan must require the team to list transition services that will support the student in meeting his or her career goal. The plan also must require the team to list IEP goals that align with the career goal the student wishes to achieve. It should also require the team to list outside services if there are any, and the plan should also require the team to provide transfer of parental rights when the student nears the age of 18. Academic career planning is now mandated, like I said before, for all students. This process is student-driven, and students must create their own visions for college and career readiness goals. I talked about the summary of performance and how this is created when the student is going to graduate high school. This is an overview of the supports and services, again, that are provided for the student while they were in secondary school. It should list the student's current academic and functional performance abilities, so where they are in reading, where they are in math, where they are in writing. And then it should also provide recommendations for employers or post-secondary programs to best support the student's needs. Something also important about the summary of performance, or SOP, is that it now requires the student's perspective, and it lists questions that the students must answer before they graduate. So again, that's something that's newer. And then this is extremely important. So parental involvement. Again, it's so critical that the parents are involved every step of the way throughout the transition process. It's important for parents to know that the goals may be modified. Yes, it's very important to set high expectations, but maintain flexibility to accept different outcomes. This is important as well. Families may have to advocate for increased expectations and more challenging academics. High expectations lead to positive transition outcomes. And then it's important that parents and guardians are active participants throughout the IEP process. So some steps for parents to take provided from the National Center on Transition and Employment. Number 1, expect your child to be valued as an individual whose rights are respected. Number 2, discuss with school personnel what the child can do at home or in the community. Number 3, describe why and how your vision for your child makes sense. And number 4, educate yourself about the special education process and learn how to turn your child's needs into measurable goals for the individualized educational plan. And number 5, appreciate those who provide excellent services for your child and actively participate in planning those services. Those are, again, some tips to take for parents and steps to take. Now we're going to take a look at supported decision making versus guardianship. This is information that I think is very, very important. And I think, this is information, like I mentioned before, I just recently became more aware of what supported decision making is. Previously, I was more so just aware of what guardianship was. I was not as informed about supported decision making. It's important to note that guardianship transfers all of the rights of an individual with a disability to their guardian. The individual with a disability cannot make their own choices, where they want to live, where they want to work. That is in the hands of the guardian. Many parents and guardians are told that they have to get guardianship after the student graduates, but this is not true. Supported decision making is a different option that still provides the rights for the individual with a disability. So it's important to know that in this process, the person with a disability works with their supporters who assist them in making their own decisions and choices. It's also important to note that once a guardianship is created, it's very hard to undo the process. Guardianship is a very serious decision that can have lifelong consequences. A person using supported decision making appoints a trusted advisor, and this could be a friend, a family member, or a professional to serve as a supporter. Now we're going to take a deeper look into integrated employment. So integrated employment can look many different ways. One way could be community-based work experience programs. It could be individualized training in real job sites. There should be collaboration with adult service providers, working with adult service providers such as vocational rehabilitation, and this can help create high-quality work experiences for students with disabilities. Integrated employment can also help with business partnerships. There are different businesses who have inclusive hiring programs such as Microsoft or Walgreens, so that's important to note. Sheltered workshops. These programs can teach job readiness skills and they're more segregated. And then there's also supported employment and customized employment, and I will provide information about both of those as well. So Wayman states that all students, including those with and without disabilities, and regardless of the severity of their disability, should look forward to growing up and leading an adult life. Wayman also states that the opportunity to train in job settings may be the most critical for those students with significant disabilities who have difficulty generalizing skills acquired in one setting to another. It's important to note that a vocational rehabilitation counselor can work with a student with a disability to provide pre-employment services such as temporary work experiences, transition and vocational assessments, support in employment, internships, and job coaching. Support in employment. A VR counselor works to identify the student's interests and preferences. They also help to secure employment for the person that is aligned with that person's interests and preferences. They also can provide job coaching services and supports to help maintain competitive employment. Customized employment. According to Wayman, a customized job is one that has been negotiated with an employer and whose tasks differ from a standard job description. So this is generally a placement that has been created for that individual specifically. That is customized employment. We mentioned before assistive technology. So again, assistive technology are tools or devices that allow students with disabilities to participate in activities and routines at home, in the community, and the school by helping them overcome barriers. There are different options. There are low-tech options and there are high-tech options. So some low-tech options could be color-coded keys, large calculators, pencil grips, highlighters, versus high-tech options could be laptop computer with specialized software, text-to-speech software, or speech-to-text software. And it's important that the IEP team has made an assistive technology plan in place prior to the student leaving high school. If the AT is not in the student's plan, it can be very costly, and the parent or guardian may have to purchase that AT. So that's important to have that in the student's plan prior to graduating. Toma states that AT can play a large role in creating universal access for all individuals in the classroom and in the community. It's important to keep in mind that accommodations are mandatory for schools to provide through the child's IEP plan. The Family Center on Technology and Disability state that if your child benefits from assistive technology and or uses it as an accommodation, it is a key part of his life that helps him participate as fully as he can in school, work, and life activities. So again, very important to advocate for this if it is a part of your child's IEP plan. Make sure to advocate for assistive technology. Once it is a part of the plan, then it is a legal right that that technology is provided for the student. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about Social Security and work incentives. A resource that is very helpful to take a deeper look into is the Social Security Red Book. This is a very helpful resource for parents. The conversation regarding Social Security and work incentives should be had throughout the student's high school years and possibly even prior to that. Yes, a student can work after high school and still receive his or her Social Security benefits. I'm going to say that one more time. Yes, a student can work after high school and still receive his or her Social Security benefits. That is a myth that I think a lot of people are not aware of. So that's why I wanted to repeat that twice. I'm going to talk a little bit more deeper about the difference between SSDI and SSI. And then it's important to keep in mind that there is different criteria for a student who is blind versus a student who is not blind. A student who is blind can make additional income and still receive Social Security benefits. So SSDI is a system that a person can pay into if they have been hurt and injured, which is preventing them from being able to work. SSI is a needs-based program that is set up primarily for people with significant disabilities. It's also important to note that the Social Security Red Book states that a person with a disability cannot earn more than $1,260 a month in order to receive their SSI benefits. However, and this is that difference that I was talking about, if a person is blind, he or she can earn up to $2,110 and still receive SSI benefits. So it is important to note that. All right, now taking a deeper look into post-secondary education. I think post-secondary education is so important for all students with disabilities. Unfortunately, there is a history of having a low population of students with disabilities enrolled in post-secondary programs. I did put a quote up by Toma that states that post-secondary education is becoming more critical for the advancement and continued success of individuals in the workplace. Transition planning should include consideration of post-secondary transition programs for all students. This includes students with intellectual disabilities. In post-secondary education programs, students are no longer covered under IDEA law, but they are covered under the ADA law, so Americans with Disabilities Act. Through ADA of 1990, this requires post-secondary programs in schools to provide services and programs for people with disabilities. It's important to note that services do change from being entitlement under IDEA law to eligibility under ADA. So that's that difference between that K-12 services and then adult services. Post-secondary institutions must provide reasonable accommodations, and that's something through ADA law as well. Students must determine if the supports they need to be successful will be provided at the specific college and/or university. It can be difficult for a student with a disability to transition from having a case manager in K-12 that has helped them with advocacy and dependence, that has helped them with advocacy, and this can cause dependence on that case manager. But in the post-secondary setting, the student must become his or her own advocate. This emphasizes the importance of teaching students self-advocacy skills while they are in secondary school. Secondary schools should also provide field trip opportunities for students with disabilities to have access to seeing a college campus. Another difference between secondary and post-secondary schooling is that students in post-secondary schooling are now held responsible for their academic success, not their teachers or their parents. While the student is in high school, these expectations should be provided to the student so that they are informed about the differences in structure and expectations in a post-secondary setting. During their secondary education years, teachers must focus heavily on college and career readiness standards to prepare them for post-secondary education. Another item that is important to discuss is that the student is the one who must request his or her IEP accommodations. They must go to the DSS office, the Student Support Services office at the college or university, and they must also bring the most recent copy of their IEP and reevaluation. It is also important to know that the college or university isn't then responsible for accepting or not accepting accommodations listed in the IEP, so that's up to the college or university. Lastly, it's extremely important that the person with a disability is aware of his or her own rights. So that is important as well. All right, I did want to share a couple resources with you just regarding self-determination and then self-advocacy. So this first document is a webinar. So it is about facilitating student-led IEPs. The second one is what will you find on the self-determination channel. And then the third one is from Whitewater, and it is focusing on self-advocacy, self-determination, and peer mentoring resources. The webinar does a great job of describing the process of involving a student in his or her own IEP meeting. I thought it provided information about what a quality IEP meeting should look like, and I think that's important for parents to know. It also defines the roles of each participant at the meeting, and it talks about benefits of students leading their own IEP meetings, which we talked about previously. The second resource, the Self-Determination channel, is just an excellent YouTube channel that really features people with disabilities addressing their strengths and challenges, as well as having them share their experiences that they have had with gaining self-determination skills and then employment skills, which I think is very important to, be aware of and to watch and to learn from. And then the third one from UW-Whitewater provided a quick resource for families and students with disabilities defining self-advocacy and self-determination. They also share peer mentoring opportunities that they provide on their campus. So I think it's great to look into just some of those supports that, again, post-secondary education programs are providing. Some additional resources. So these are really more so focused on becoming an involved member in the IEP process. Again, I just think it's so important that parents are involved every single step of the way. The parents are a member of the IEP process, a very important member. They know their child the most and the best. So the first resource is Developing Your Child's IEP, and that is from the Parent Center Hub. I thought that it provided an excellent resource for parents that explains the IEP process and what role parents should play in the IEP process. It also talked about what parents should bring with them to the meeting, which I thought was helpful to know. And the resource also goes through the entire I4LF document of the IEP and describes what information should be used within each component of the IEP. Again, very important for parents to be aware of. The second resource is from WI Facets, and it is just listing different online resources. WI Facets contains an archive of online resources to help provide parents with additional knowledge of how best to support their child. Right now, I thought it was great that the site contained information that could be really helpful for virtual learning during COVID-19. The resource also provided mini workshops to provide information for parents, as well as dates and times for parent conferences. So again, a really good resource for parents. And then the third one is from the ARC of Wisconsin, and it's just really talking about parent organizations. The ARC Wisconsin lists different parent organizations all over the state of Wisconsin, one being Family Voices of Wisconsin, which is a program that provides information and leadership opportunities for parents of youth with disabilities, Parent to Parent. This organization matches parents with other parents of children with similar needs. WI Facets, which I talked about already, it's a parent information center. And then Wisconsin Family Ties provides supports for students with mental health needs. And Wisconsin Statewide Parent Initiative works to form partnerships with school districts and helps provide shared decision making with families and students with disabilities. I also shared some assistive technology resources. The first one being from Edutopia. This is really focusing on assistive technology. I thought that Edutopia provided resources for parents about the basics that they should know about assistive technology. They list assistive technology that can be used when working with students with disabilities. The website also contains a short video about what advice a professional would have for parents of a child with a disability regarding assistive technology. Second resource that I have listed is from the Center for Parent Information and Resources, and is also talking about assistive technology for students with disabilities. I thought that they did an excellent job of preparing a checklist that could be used with the IEP team to determine if a student could benefit from using assistive technology, and if so, what technology options might best meet their needs. I thought this was a great resource for parents because it really can help them to see the process that professionals use when determining which technology might work best for a specific child. And then the third resource is from Disability Rights, and it's again focusing more so on the rights in assistive technology. Disability Rights of Wisconsin is a resource that parents of students with disabilities should be aware of. Through the IEP, a child may be determined to need AT, and if this is the case, it is the right of the child to have access to their AT. The Disability Rights of Wisconsin can also help to provide parents working with the school system to provide assistive technology options so they can work directly with the school and the parents, which I thought was helpful. I then also wanted to share some resources that are provided right within the Brown Deer community. The first resource that I wanted to provide is DVR Services, Division of Vocational Rehabilitation. The role of DVR Services is to provide employment services and counseling to people with disabilities, provide and arrange work transportation for people with disabilities, and provide training and technical assistance to employers regarding disability employment issues or concerns. The DVR Vocational Rehabilitation Counselor for Brown Deer is Amanda Glincher. And to be eligible for DVR services, a person must have a disability that meets the criteria on the DVR website. A person must also complete the application. There's now an online application. The disability must make it difficult for the person to secure employment. And then the person must need DVR assistance to meet their employment goal. Another organization or agency available. Another resource available in the Brown Deer community is called Yippee Youth in partnership with Parents for Empowerment. This assists youth with disabilities in learning how to make decisions for themselves, speaking up in their school, in their community, connecting with other youth with disabilities, preparing for work or college, and then improving self-advocacy skills. It also assists parents with planning for their child's life after high school, learning about additional resources, and becoming a part of a network of parents with youth with disabilities and sharing information. This was last held February 21st and 22nd in 2020, so right before the shutdown, at the Hilton Garden Inn in Milwaukee Park Place, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This is a partnership between Hilton Garden Inn, Department of Workforce Development, Wisconsin Statewide Parent Educator Initiative, and then Milwaukee Public Schools. Another organization or agency within the Brown Deer community is Goodwill. Goodwill has a program called Empower One that really works with individuals with disabilities to help build job skills and self-determination skills to help them achieve successful employment. This program also provides individuals with a chance to be out in the surrounding community, and they're able to interact with community members. The program is made up of 60 people, and they provide training and supported employment opportunities for people with disabilities. And there is a Northern County campus and a Southwest campus, so Northern and Southern. within the Milwaukee area. Another organization or agency is Milwaukee Area Technical College, or MATC. This is a technical college. The Student Accommodation Services Department works to ensure that students with disabilities have access and opportunities to programs and services provided through MATC campus. MATC provides services and supports through Section 504 law and ADA law. And according to MATC, they provide the following supports and services through the Student Accommodation Learning Center, a disability specialist to provide one-on-one support, assistive technology, assistance with course selection, computers with enlarged text, sign language interpreting, tape recordings of lectures, testing accommodations, and text conversions into different formats. So again, those are some accommodations that they will approve at MATC to help support students with disabilities in their post-secondary education. Another organization or agency in the Brown Deer community is Independence First. Independence First provides a variation of services for people with disabilities. They offer over 20 different programs and services for people with disabilities, and they help to answer questions that people with disabilities may have related to personal care, financial literacy, or employment questions. They also have independent living centers. The 5 core services that Independence First provides are information and referral services, peer support, independent living skills training, transition, and then advocacy. And according to Independence First, the independent living philosophy holds that individuals with disabilities have the right to live with dignity and with appropriate support in their own homes, fully participate in their communities, and to control and make decisions about their lives. Consumer choice, autonomy, and control define independent living. Another organization or agency within the Brown Deer community is Rogers Behavioral Health. Rogers provides youth and adults with both inpatient and outpatient mental health services and addiction care. The outpatient care is based upon evidence and can provide part-day options as well as additional school support. According to Rogers Behavioral Health, the inpatient care facility can accommodate up to 56 residents that are in need of round-the-clock care. They also state that they offer various programs such as addiction recovery, mental health recovery, depression recovery, mental health and addiction recovery, OCD and anxiety, and then trauma recovery. Another organization and agency in the Brown Deer community is the YMCA Miracle League. This is a baseball league run by the YMCA of the Metropolitan Milwaukee that encourages all youth to play baseball, including youth with disabilities. And according to the Miracle League of Milwaukee, the league is designed on a custom designed field with a flat surface to prevent injuries and accommodate youth with wheelchairs. All areas are universally accessible, including the bathrooms, locker rooms, etc. Another organization and agency within the Brown Deer community is Self-Directed Employment Planning Virtual Groups. This is a small group planning series for parents of youth with developmental disabilities that focuses on self-directed employment opportunities. According to the Wisconsin Board for People with Developmental Disabilities, the Employment Planning Series is free and it's a set of 10 modules. Resources are provided that help people with disabilities and their families about self-directed employment opportunities while creating a plan to help reach their employment goals. And the main contact for this group is Allison Peets, who is a Brown Deer parent. And the last agency or organization within the Brown Deer community is Jewish Family Services, JFS Housing. JFS Housing offers affordable housing options for people of low income as well as families with disabilities. In addition to housing services, JFS Housing also provides additional services and supports. According to Jewish Family Services, Bradley Crossing, which is located in Brown Deer, Wisconsin, provides housing options for families with disabilities to live in a safe and close-knit community. They provide business services on site, fun and games for family, there's fitness programs, and more. And then these are my references. So again, take a closer look. These are all great references that I think could be very helpful for parents with disabilities. I hope that you took away helpful information from today's presentation. Thank you.